So, over the weekend, I had a chance to get my hands on the Fujifilm GFX100RF. My local camera store, Precision Camera, here in Austin, Texas, was having some kind of an expo at the local expo center, the local event center. And it had a hall of all the usual vendors. And my man Mike at Fujifilm had a GFX100RF with him. So I got like 10 minutes with the camera, just doing whatever I wanted with it, shooting with it, handling it, etc., etc. I put my memory card in the camera, but unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's because Lightroom can't read the files yet or something, but when I opened them on the computer, they looked all funny and just kind of blacked out. So I thought it was an error and I deleted them and then didn't realize those were the test images I had taken. So I don't have any test images, unfortunately, from the camera. But, I can put a couple of images here from other GFX 100 cameras, including the GFX 100S, which is basically the same sensor and processor and everything, just to give you an idea of what the files look like. But that's probably not why you're here watching this video, right? I'll cut right to the chase. Getting my hands on the camera, erased basically all of the doubts I had about the camera. I've put my pre-order in. I'm going to try to get one ASAP so I can do a full review and give you all the details, including sample images actually from the camera. So yeah, first impressions are, 2025, what a year for cameras. Holy buckets. The S1R2, now this, the GFX100RF, and there's a rumored M11V with an EVF. I think also we're still going to see a Leica medium format system. Who knows what else? Another Hasselblad X2D3. I'm hoping for a retro camera from Canon. All kinds of stuff. But getting back to the camera at hand, it really is like the Fuji GFX100S had a baby with the Fuji X100VI. The camera has basically all the internals of the 100S, including the same EVF, same sensor, same processor. And then the externals are like a X100VI on steroids, basically. And in most cases, I would say this, brainchild, child of these two cameras got all the good DNA from its parents, the good sensor, the cool retro vibes. I'll get into more stuff in the pros and cons section of this video, but the only thing I didn't really like about the hardware was the wonky joystick and that the grip, this part here, isn't leather, it's plastic, just like the X100VI. Otherwise, it just has got all these vibes, and it's like a slightly nicer made version. Like this dial on the GFX version is way nicer than on the X100VI. Another way of looking at this camera is that you kind of have like two paths in my mind if you're going to make a retro camera, right? You either kind of go the Leica route, but I feel like Leica is still taking some half measures, and you make like a total film experience camera. Like ideally the whole thing is mechanical. Someone should make one with like a film winder that actually goes around and you can only take a shot with the digital camera after you've advanced the film with that mechanical lever. Or you kind of put like a modern camera with a retro skin. I think this is the path Fujifilm has chosen. And they do it the best. I think they do it much better than Nikon. Like the Nikon ZF in my mind is just kind of like a slightly better Z6 that has two dials on the top of it, It's missing a lot of the retro charm and a lot of the features, like a joystick, that the Fuji puts on their modern retro cameras. And Fuji has nailed this across a number of cameras. The X100 series, the X Pro series, and even the XT series. I'll say now, even the GFX100RF. I'm so glad to see this because they hadn't applied this design philosophy to the GFX range yet, and I really felt like the GFX cameras were kind of sterile and sad. We can get more into this later. The only like vibey GFX camera they had made was the 50R, I believe it was called, that had like the brick-like rangefinder, and they released a 50mm, I think f3.5 with it, and that lens honestly was not good. And that camera was still too sterile, not fully retroed out, it was a half measure. And for me, at least, often half measures just don't work. So I'm really like happy to see that it looks like Fuji has kind of gotten back on the right path with this cameras and has understood that this is its strength. It's not like Fuji just started making retro cameras, right? With the APS-C line, they've been doing it for over 10 years. And then if you go back to the film days, Fuji used to make a ton of rangefinder, kind of retro, vibey style, medium format cameras. Okay. Some fixed lens, some not. But there's a lot of DNA going into these cameras, right? So I love to see Fuji going back to those roots, but making it modern. They do it the best, and it shows. And like the GFX 100 RF is kind of a culmination of that in many ways, I feel. One example of this is that like all these aspect ratios, right? There's the dial on the back, and I'll talk more about like my pros and cons about what I do and don't like about this dial, but it's got these different aspect ratios, right? At first, I thought that was a gimmick, but holding it in my hand, I totally get it now. Um, and in a lot of ways, it harkens back to Fuji's, roots in film medium format cameras, right? Fuji has made a whole bunch of medium format cameras, twin lens reflexes, big like box modular guys, and then a whole mess of rangefinders. In the rangefinder series, I believe they've had pretty much like every medium format, i.e. aspect ratio, in the digital world. They've had 6:4:5, they've had 6:6, 6:7, 6:8, 6:9, 6:17. So, they have done a whole wide range of these, and you can get most of those aspect ratios in the GFX 100 RF. So such a cool marriage of like old retro, film roots and modern technology. Having said that, though, I will also say the camera kind of highlights the problem with Fuji's modern approach with cameras, in that they've decided to sort of attack the market from both sides. They've got smaller, lighter APS-C cameras, and then big, heavy, kind of pro-grade medium format cameras. Nothing in the middle, so that they could have like a compact full-frame camera like the Leica M series. So, the problem to me here is that the APS-C cameras have too many limitations to be a perfect everyday carry. During the day, this is great, especially with its internal ND filters. This is the Fujifilm X106. But in low light and extreme dynamic range situations, the APS-C sensor falls off. It's not that fun to shoot at night or in like a dark bar with this camera. You've really got to push the ISO. Artifacts show up grained. It's not great. The picture gets soft. The colors go off. So, it's just not a perfect solution for like all times, not just every day, but every night carry as well. And then the medium format cameras, even the GFX 100 RF to a certain extent, are way too big to be an easy, kind of like stick it in your pocket, light, carry it with you everywhere camera. I would say that the GFX 100 RF kind of feels more like the Q3. And if you saw my video comparing the X106 to the Q3, kind of my conclusion was that the X106 is actually a better everyday carry camera because it's smaller and lighter. The Q3 is more like a, hey, I'm going out to photograph today. My main, aim is to photograph, so I'm going to take the Q3 and probably wear it like this the whole time and really focus on the photography. I think the GFX 100 RF is a little bit more on that side of things, like the Q3, in that it's like a little bit bigger and bulkier. You're not just going to throw it in the middle console of your car. You're not going to throw it in a pocket. You've kind of got to carry it outside of your pockets, on your person like this to use it. So, I think that if Fuji had made something in the middle, like a smaller X Pro 3 with a full frame sensor that was maybe a little bit cheaper, that would have sold better and probably would be more likely to be my everyday carry camera. But we'll see. I really like the GFX 100 RF, and I'm going to get one, so it may all change once I start using it and get used to the size of it. I'll talk a little bit more about the size of the camera, but kind of want to get into just like the pros and cons of the camera. As I saw it, again, only had like 10 minutes with the camera. Okay, so rapid fire the pros. It feels great in the hand. The grip is bigger than the X106. You almost feel like you don't need an extra grip or a thumb support, but more on that later. Small Rig already has made some accessories for the camera, so there is sort of a thumb thing, but it's not the regular thumb support. Again, I'll get more into that in the cons. I would say the GFX 100 RF feels better in the hand than the X106. As I said before, the dials feel a little bit more high quality, except the joystick. I'll get into that. The top is clearly full aluminum. The bottom is aluminum. Again, I wish they had put leatherette or leather on the center. It's more of this plasticky feeling stuff, but not terrible. I think the EVF on the GFX 100 RF, which is the same as the X100S, is like a really good sweet spot 5.7 millimeter or 5.7 million dot EVF, and it's a nice big EVF, so that works for me. I really like that EVF. I like that the GFX has a flippy screen that kind of comes out like this. From the little bit I saw and heard from the Fuji rep, the lens is sharp corner to corner. It's not a repeat of the 50 millimeter that came out at the same time as the 50R. It was a kind of a soft mess. It focuses quick, it's snappy, and it's sharp. I was a little bit worried about the camera not having IBIS. The room I was in seemed pretty dark, and it seemed fine. I think the lens is wide enough that like your minimum shutter speed would be something like 1/35. That's good enough even with an f4 and a decent ISO. So you don't really need the IBIS. Yes, f4 would be nicer if it was 2.8, but honestly, with a wide angle lens on a medium format camera, f4 is probably plenty shallow, and the bokeh looked decent as the little bit that I got to see. So, I think that YouTubers are making a bigger deal out of f4 and the no IBIS. I think those people don't really understand how this all applies to medium format, especially medium format with a wide angle lens. It's not like a very, very wide aperture, 28 millimeter lens would have that much bokeh or shunt up to fear. That's just the nature of a wide lens, right? So I don't think that's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. But, of course, it would be nicer. Bigger aperture means more chances for bokeh or makes it a little bit easier to get the bokeh. So it is what it is. The camera has 2 card slots, which I think is fantastic. And like I said, I think it's just got a lot of joy of shooting in it. It's a fun camera to play with and shoot with. Now, I think it is going to be interesting to see if Leica comes out with an M11V, which will also be a joy to shoot with. If it's more small and compact and still has like a 61 megapixel sensor, that's very close to a medium format, and it makes it a very tricky, decision. Without the M11V being out on the market, I would say, at least for me, the GFX100RF is the most fun fixed lens everyday carry camera on the market to shoot. It pretty much rivals the M series in just joy of shooting, more or less. It's a very different experience, much more like digital experience, but it's really fun digital experience. So I think they really did a good job with this, like the joy of shooting aspect, which honestly, in this day and age of just excellent cameras everywhere, might be one of the most important factors to consider in buying a camera like this. Okay, so now let's talk about the cons, the things I don't like about this camera. A lot of these sort of overlap with things I like about the camera. For example, the back screen tilts out, but I don't think it tilts up like it does on the X-T5 series of cameras. I don't understand why they didn't put that on there. I also don't like the color and rendition of the back screen. I feel like it doesn't give as accurate representation. It's not tuned as well as the EVF. They maybe don't match. I'll have to see more when I have the camera in my hands, but typically Fuji back screens aren't as good as like Canon and Nikon and Leica back screens, and I don't understand why, especially on a $5,000 camera like this. I think I said this before, I don't like the plastic part, like the black leatherette part of the GFX100RF. It's very plasticky and I don't like the way that feels. I wish they had put real leather on it like they do with the Leica cameras. As I think I kind of indicated, the joystick on the GFX 100RF stinks. It's like the old GFX100, the original joystick. It's really small and flat, kind of hard to move. The one I tried was kind of mushy also. I don't understand why they didn't just keep the same joystick as the X106. This one is great. Another thing I don't quite understand is that, I do wish the GFX100 RF was about a 1/4 inch shorter. And then it's weird because it does have this big top plate, and then there's just nothing on it up here except for one little, focusing light. I think they should have put a flash here, even if it didn't do much, and maybe even a fake rangefinder patch. It just looks blank and empty. Looks much nicer on this camera having all the stuff, the flash and the rangefinder patch here. And then on the back, I love being able to put a thumb support here, like the X106. But on the GFX 100RF, there's that big crop button here. So if you wanted to use that, the thumb support would have to go over that. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Hopefully some third-party manufacturer will figure a workaround, because while I do think the grip on the GFX 100RF is better, it still felt like you needed a thumb support up here, at the top here. SmallRig has come out with this thing, like an adhesive piece that you can stick onto the back, so the thumb support or thumb rest would be here. I don't think that's quite the right spot. I think you want your thumb up here, close to the dials, so you can reach them. So hopefully somebody will figure that out by the time the GFX 100RF comes out. I also hope, since there's no flash here, that somebody comes out with a cool little flash you can put on the top. I think that like Godox or one of these Chinese flash companies is going to give me like IM30 or MI30 to try out for the camera. So hopefully that comes. I also have the old Fuji, whatever it is, EXF20, but I think that's discontinued now. So there might be solutions there, but again, I would have preferred it if it was just there was a flash just on the camera. One more thing I'll say is that when you take all the accessories off of the GFX 100 RF, the lens is really small with that f4 lens, right? But then when you put on like the adapter and the hood and all this stuff, it like doubles or triples the size of the lens, and it's like sticking out this far, not unlike the Q3 here. So, for my money, I would have rather they just had the lens be all off balance like the Q3, but then have a really shallow depth of field. Go f2.8 or even wider and brighter. That would have been my preference. Again, I think the f4 is fine for most things, but it sort of takes out that sort of blurry background portraiture piece that you could do with a wider open lens, or you could do it more easily at least. Also, I think that sort of brings up another problem here, right? Is that like if you're trying to choose between the Q3 and the GFX 100 RF, there isn't like a clear winner. It kind of depends on, what you want, right? With this guy, you're getting a full frame sensor, so like excellent image quality, but not nearly as much, dynamic range and able to push and pull and post and that kind of thing. But, leaf shutter, all that stuff. But you get optical image stabilization, which helps a little bit. And this is an f1.7 aperture lens. Only a single card slot. EVF's not that great. No joystick. And then on the GFX 100 RF, you get a joystick. It's got a really nice EVF. It's got 2 card slots. And it's got a medium format sensor, which is awesome to edit and post. Super big dynamic range, 16-bit color, all that stuff, I would say straight out of camera, not that different, but once you start editing it, it's a big difference. But then you've got, an f4 aperture lens and no IBIS. So it sort of depends. If you're wanting shallow depth of field and or you're not going to edit and post and you don't care what the joystick, the Q3 might be the better choice. It's about the same price. It's a little bit more expensive. If you're kind of like me and you're probably going to use it more for street and travel and just kind of fun everyday carry, shooting friends, I'd say the Fuji might be the better option. Also if you're doing more pro stuff, just because of 2 card slots, the RF might be the better option. There's not a clear winner there, at least not yet. I plan to get it and try it and compare it to these cameras. So we'll see more videos to come. But right now, there's not a clear winner to me. That also goes to speak about the M11V, which I talked about earlier in the video. If that comes out, that might be more my perfect camera. Just form factor wise, the RF is like this big. It's kind of a square thing. This is kind of the perfect everyday carry size. You put a smaller lens on it, like a 28mm pancake. The EVF, that might, if especially has video in it, that might be my perfect everyday carry. So it could have a situation where I buy the GFX 100 RF and then end up selling them like a month later when the M11V comes out. We'll see. I would definitely test those two against each other. I do have to say that GFX 100 RF in this kind of thought pattern feels a little bit like the problem with like Japanese product strategy. They set out a number of things they want to do and they stick to that and they usually do that really well. But then that means they're not necessarily paying as much attention to the overall market and competition as they should. I kind of wish they took the more American and honestly the more and more the Chinese mindset of like taking something and then making it so it beats all the competition, making it the most competitive camera possible. If they had done that, I think they would have made a lens with a wider aperture so that you could just say, hey, the GFX 100 RF is just better than the Q3. It's got 2 card slots, it's got a joystick, it's got, just as big of an aperture, just as sharp of a lens, and, it's the ASPH lens, all that stuff. Better EVF, medium format sensor, yada, yada. Also tactile clicky dials, all that stuff. But they didn't do that. I think they would also had to put a distance scale on the lens, which I'm shocked they didn't. They did put an aperture, the little nubbins of the aperturing so it's easier to spin, but no distance scale. Fuji has the best digital distance scale inside the viewfinder, but I still like to have it on the lens. But, if they just did these small things, it would be like indubitably the best camera, everyday carry fixed lens camera in the market, but they didn't do that, so it remains kind of an open question. So a little bit of a ramble here, but I just kind of want to give you all my impressions of the camera now that I have had my hands on it. For me, it's a definite buy. My pre-order's in. I went for the black one, but then I also did a backup pre-order of the silver one. So we'll see. I'm not sure which one I'll get. If I get them both, it'll be a hard decision. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Should I get the black one or the silver one? Have you gotten your hands on the camera? What were your thoughts? Did I miss anything? Do you want me to test anything once I have the camera in my hands? You know, one thing I'm worried about is I'm going to Italy next month. One of my side gigs is officiating weddings, and I'm officiating a wedding in Italy. And I was hoping to bring this camera, but I don't think I'll have it in time. So I may end up bringing the S1R2 instead with me. We'll see. We'll see. But, you know, when I have the camera in hand, what do you want me to test? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.